I think you never outgrow your love of these stories of giants and ogres and witches and all of that. Superhero comics give you that for older people. I was born in Manhattan. I lived in Manhattan most of my young life. Two of my big influences were books and movies. I loved Tarzan. I loved Jules Verne. I loved anything that was imaginative, that was high concept, that was a little bit bigger than life. I loved the movies I loved King Kong, Dracula, Frankenstein. My favorite hero was Errol Flynn. Oh man, the roles he played, he was to me, the ultimate superhero. He was, in fact, when I used to leave the theater after seeing an Errol Flynn movie, I'd be about 12 years old, I don't know. I'd walk down the street with a crooked little grin on my face, thinking it was the way he grinned. And I had an imaginary sword at my side. And I'd be looking around, hoping to see some bully picking on a little girl so I could defend her. It was always frustrating. I never found the bully. Probably lucky for me, because he would have killed me. But I wanted to be Errol Flynn more than anything I can think of. When I started in comics, I was hired by Joe Simon, who was the editor at Timely Comics. He and Jack Kirby, the artist writer, were a team. In fact, in the beginning, Joe also drew and wrote, and I had trouble telling whether Joe had drawn something or whether Jack had, because their styles were very similar. And they were running the company really creatively. They were handling the books. And I was hired as more or less of a gopher. I'd get their coffee for them, and I'd also do proofreading and whatever had to be done. Then they let me write some stuff. They found out I could write a little bit. And I started writing a few of the scripts. It was fun. It wasn't really hard to do. And at some point, they left. And I was the only guy in the department who remained. I was about 17 years old, and the publisher, named Martin Goodman, the publisher said, "Hey, do you think you could hold down the job as editor until I get an adult, normal human being?" Well, when you're 17, what do you know? I said, "Sure, I could do it." And stayed there ever since. I guess he never found a normal human being. Worked there a year or so, and then I enlisted in the Army, because that was World War II. Before I got shipped overseas, somebody found out that I had been writing comic books. And they said they needed writers at the Army Filmmaking Division. I'm not sure what it was exactly called. Next thing I knew, I was shipped to Astoria, Long Island, where I was in company with William Saroyan, Frank Capra, people like that. And I ended up writing training films and instructional books for the troops. And they would ship me around the country wherever a post needed somebody to write training films or instructional books. And that was pretty much what I did during the war. And I did posters also. Some of the posters I did and the books that I wrote were really so great, the way we trained the troops, that in a way, I think I won the war single-handedly by some of these posters. After the war, when I was discharged, I went back to my job in the comics. I can tell you exactly when Timely Comics became Marvel. Actually, from Timely, they had a lot of other names in the interim. I don't remember all of them, but the last name they had before they became Marvel was Atlas Comics. And after we did the Fantastic Four, and we did the Hulk, Spider-Man, the X-Men, so forth, we suddenly began to realize, hey, we've got fans. We had never had fans before. We had never gotten fan mail before. But all of a sudden, with the start of our new superheroes, we got real letters. I like this, I don't like this, you did a great job on this. So I decided we ought to change the name of the company, get something better than Atlas. And the very first book that Martin Goodman had ever published, even before I came to work there, was called Marvel Comics. So I figured Marvel's a great word. And also, there's so much you could do with it. You could make up slogans and mottos. So I decided I would treat Marvel like a big advertising campaign. And I made up slogans like, "Make mine Marvel, Marvel marches on, welcome to the Marvel age of comics," things like that. And I came up with a lot of catchphrases. I would sign all the things I wrote with "Nuff said" or "hang loose" or "face front." But I noticed that the competition was starting to use those expressions too. So I figured I've got to get something that they won't copy. And I tried to think of something, A, they wouldn't know how to spell, and B, they wouldn't know what it means. And that's why I came up with the word Excelsior. I tried to inject a feeling of warmth in all the books. I always had the feeling that the other comic books, they had good stories, good artwork, everything was fine, but there was a detachment. Even in their letters pages, and they had very few. We were the ones who really made letters pages popular, but occasionally they'd run a letters page and it would be like this: "Dear Editor, I read your story and I liked it, signed Charles Smith." And the answer would be, "Dear Charles, thank you very much, the editor." Well, I decided to run letters pages, but I wanted to make them friendly. I wanted the kids to feel a part of Marvel. So even if somebody wrote a letter that said "Dear Editor" to me, when I printed it, I wrote "Dear Stan." I changed the word editor to Stan. And when I answered the letter, instead of saying "Dear Charles," I'd say something like, "Hey, thanks a lot, Charlie," And I tried to keep the tone friendly, as if I'm a guy they know and we're just talking together. And after a while, it became very natural. And after a while, all the letters, "Hey, Stan, I loved your story. Hey, Stan, I hated your story," whatever it was. But it was like they knew me and I knew them. There was one time, and I don't even remember, it might have been the Fantastic Four or some other book. We had a story that I thought wasn't that good, but we were stuck with it. We had to send it out. There was the due date. I didn't have time to do it over. And on the cover, I wrote a little note. I don't remember the exact words, but something like, "Hey, kids, I've got to admit, this isn't the best story we've ever done. But we've given you so many good ones before, we think you owe it to us to buy this one also." Everybody thought I was crazy, That book sold better than most of the others in that period. And I got a ton of mail saying, "You guys are great. Nobody else would have written anything like that." In our stories, I would occasionally have somebody die or introduce a serious subject. I didn't like to do it too much because basically I feel comic books, in fact, anything I do, whether it's comic books or movies or television or animation, should be entertaining. And I never want to, and most of what I do is for younger people. I consider people in their 20s younger. In fact, right now, I consider people in their 70s younger. But at any rate, it was for younger people. And I didn't feel they should be burdened with too much heavy stuff. I felt they should read my stories, enjoy them, and come away feeling better. But at the same time, in trying to inject some reality, some realism into the stories, and also to surprise the readers, because it's important for a reader never to know what's coming next, thought occasionally I should have somebody die or get seriously ill, occasionally touch on some serious subject. Now, those are two separate things. The having somebody die was for the sake of drama and holding the reader's interest. The serious themes that I would occasionally inject were for another reason. I began to realize, judging by the fan mail that we received, I began to realize that our books had quite an influence on the readers. And I kind of took that seriously. I felt if these people are reading my words and the words of the other writers working for Marvel, I felt we've got to be careful and we've got to make sure that we're not giving them the wrong messages. So I don't like to preach. I hate people to preach to me, and I don't like to preach to other people. But at the same time, I feel there are kind of universal truths that nobody could quibble with. Like, to me, the most important mantra in the world is do unto others what you'd have them do unto you. I mean, I don't see how anybody could take issue with that, and I try to follow that, and I think if everybody followed it, the world would be paradise. If you'd never treat anybody the way you didn't want to be treated. So that's about as far as I'd get into religion. Just, I was opposed to bigotry. I was opposed to cruelty. I was opposed to demeaning women or other sexes or not other or other races or colors or creeds. So I would try occasionally to bring those themes into the books. Now, very often I'd get fan mail from people. What is your religion? What do you think of Christianity as opposed to Judaism, as opposed to Buddhism? Never got into that because I didn't feel it was our place to get into that sort of thing. And I would never, I mean, I would answer them, but I never answered the question specifically. I would tell them, we are purveyors of entertainment, we hope.